Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker, and today's video is a continuation of my NBA season preview series for the 2019-20 NBA season, and this one covers the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets finished with a 42-40 record last year, and after a surprising season in which they became a playoff team and a legit free agency destination, they have suddenly transitioned from a feel-good story to now one of the most high-pressured situations in the entire NBA. And if everything goes right with all these new additions that they brought in, they should be one of the best teams in the East over the next few seasons. But if things start to go wrong, they could go wrong in a very dramatic and drastic way, and all of this could come crumbling down as a result of this offseason. So let's just go ahead and look at that offseason. First, let's talk about additions, and obviously I have to start with Kyrie Irving. Now, this is a player that had more than his fair share of issues last year on the Celtics. If you watch my season preview for that team, you'll know that I'm definitely recognizing that he caused a lot of drama. He caused a lot of issues within that team. But at the same time, from a statistical standpoint, he had a really good season. And going into a new environment in Brooklyn, a place that he chose to play, by the way, which I think is an interesting point in all of this. Initially, when he went to Boston, he didn't necessarily request to be traded there. He just didn't want to be in Cleveland, put some teams on a list that he would like to go to, and Boston was not on that list. Obviously, he reiterated his commitment to the team before the season and ended up wanting to leave anyway. But I do think it's important to note that Kyrie chose to come to Brooklyn. And if it sounds like I'm a Nets fan that is just kind of talking myself into the Kyrie thing and trying to convince myself that things won't go wrong, that's exactly what I'm doing, because in the back of my mind, there's definitely a voice that's saying this Kyrie thing is going to go wrong. This KD thing is going to go wrong. Kyrie is he's just a nutcase. Like, he's just not going to mix well in any environment for any long period of time. And that's absolutely a possibility. But if it does go wrong, I don't think it's going to be this season, because he's going to have most of the team to himself. He's going to be the guy. He's going to be the leading scorer. He's going to be the guy that the offense revolves around. And again, it looks like he wants to be there. It looks like these other guys want him to be there as well. And it all should mesh together pretty well, in my opinion. Next up, another addition is Kevin Durant, even though obviously he won't be joining the team this season. There were some reports recently that maybe he'll play this year, but they're not going to rush him back. I'd be incredibly shocked if he played this year, and more likely is going to be playing next year. And I do think that is when some issues could come into play when he does come back, how him and Kyrie mesh together. But I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about him, to be completely honest, because one, there's some other additions to talk about on this team, and two, those additions will actually be playing this season, whereas Durant will not be. Speaking of other additions, the next one is DeAndre Jordan. And this one rubbed me the wrong way initially when he was signed, because I didn't really understand why the team needed to bring in DeAndre Jordan unless it was for recruiting purposes. Like, unless that sealed the deal for KD and Kyrie, they were always going to be a package deal with DeAndre Jordan in this situation if they were to go to Brooklyn. If that's the case, that's fine. However, from an on-court perspective, I would have much rather just continued to go with Jared Allen as the starting five and continue to have kind of veteran guys backing him up like Ed Davis has been for the last few seasons. In terms of on the court, Jordan is not nearly the same defender that he has been. His athleticism has gone away a good amount, has improved slightly as a free throw shooter, which is nice, and then he's still obviously a good rebounder, can score in the paint and finish around the rim. But again, I do think there's a possibility that this is going to cause some issues. If, for example, Jared Allen is a starting five and DJ has to come off the bench, how is that going to affect Kyrie and KD and all that stuff? And it just added an unnecessary element to this team that they didn't really need. But again, maybe it'll all work out and it won't be that big of a deal, and I'm overblowing this whole situation, but it is a slight concern for me. Next up now, another addition, and this one is Taurean Prince, who the Nets got from Atlanta in the Allen Crabbe salary dump. When they were initially trying to dump salary to get 2 max slots, they actually got Taurean Prince in exchange as well. And the reason they got him is because the Hawks had been looking to trade him. He's a free agent in 2020, restricted free agent. They didn't want to spend the money to sign him. They knew that he had value, and so they used him there. But I actually think he's going to be a valuable member of this team. Once we get to the depth chart, you'll see that they'll definitely need his size and his length and his scoring ability on the wing. Someone that can shoot, someone that can score, someone that can play make a little bit, not outstanding in any one area, but specifically on this team in which a lot of the offensive responsibility is going to go to other guys. He can be someone outside of the main guys that you can definitely see surprising some people this year a little bit as a scorer, and is a little bit undervalued in my opinion as an addition, as I will get to later. Last addition now, and that is Garrett Temple, who the team signed to kind of like a mid-level exception kind of deal. And I really like this addition as well. A versatile player, can play the 1 or the 2, is kind of a combo guard, good size, can defend well, can shoot. Just a good player to have on a roster to continue to add to your depth around obviously the bigger names on this roster. So good addition there for me. Moving on now to subtractions, and there's going to be a lot of these on a team that had a ton of roster turnover this offseason. The first is obviously going to be D'Angelo Russell, who made his first All-Star team last year, was hugely important to the success and the rise of this team. And honestly, if he doesn't have as good of a season as he did, if the Nets don't make the playoffs, they probably don't bring in KD and Kyrie. In fact, I'm almost sure they don't bring in KD and Kyrie. So I'm not discounting what D'Angelo Russell did for this team, how good he was last year. However, I do believe that Kyrie Irving is a better player, and I think long-term that will be proven as well. I think D'Lo is going to have a good season in Golden State, maybe not up to the same standards that he set last season from a statistical per-game standpoint, but they definitely still will miss him despite the fact that they replaced him. And again, my opinion, a better player in Kyrie Irving. Moving on now, another subtraction is Shabazz Napier, who they traded away to Minnesota once again to create some salary space. He was a nice depth backcourt player for this team, could hit some big shots, wasn't a super efficient player, but was someone that played hard, made some good plays, wasn't outstanding to watch at times, it wasn't always pretty, but again, did provide them some depth, but that's why they brought in guys like Garrett Temple and things like that. Next up, Allen Crabbe, that's the player that I talked about earlier in the Taurean Prince deal. They were dumping his salary, but he did provide some good shooting, some good length, occasional defense for this team that they will miss, that I'm sure they would rather have him on this team than not, again, just for the depth, but they had to dump his big salary in order to bring in the offseason addition, so in the end, obviously, it makes sense. Next up, a player that honestly I'm glad to see go from this Nets team, and it's Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, because he has just continually been frustrating because he clearly has talent. He just can't score the basketball. He can't shoot, but not only that, he can't finish around the rim. Good defender, good rebounder, but if Toronto gets anything more out of him than what the Nets got out of him over the last couple of seasons, I would be pretty surprised. Next up now, a surprisingly valuable subtraction, and it's Jared Dudley, who obviously signed a new deal with the LA Lakers. And when he initially came to Brooklyn, I thought that he was just going to kind of be a veteran presence bench guy, but he actually played pretty good defense, made some occasional jump shots, made a couple of good passes in the lane, attacking closeouts and things like that. So this team will definitely miss him, specifically when you get to the depth chart and you see the limited depth and players they have at the 4 spot. It would be nice to have Jared Dudley on this team, so they're definitely actually going to miss him, surprisingly. Second to last now, another wing that they lost. This one is DeMarre Carroll, again, further thinning their depth at the 4 spot. He's now in San Antonio. Good shooter, good defender, good size. Definitely going to miss him. And then last up is Ed Davis, who was one of my favorite players in the times that he was on the Nets over the last couple of seasons because he just played so hard, brought so much energy, was such a good rebounder in the paint. Obviously, they now have the DeAndre Jordan, Jared Allen mix at the 5 spot, so they no longer need Ed Davis. But had they not brought in someone like DeAndre Jordan, losing Ed Davis would have meant a lot more to this team. Okay, moving on now, let's get to the depth chart. And for me, it's Irving, Harris, LeVert, Prince, and Jordan. Then off the bench, Temple, Dinwiddie, Kurucs, Chandler, and Jared Allen. And that's actually someone that I just realized I didn't mention in the initial additions category is Wilson Chandler, but he's going to be serving a 25-game suspension. However, I do think he's going to be important for this team at the 4 spot because, like I said, there's really not a ton of solutions there. I put Prince at the 4. He certainly would be undersized for that position, but I think that's unfortunately just kind of their best option at this point. And like I said, even as a backup, Chandler will be missing the first 25 or so games of the year. The strength of this team, in my opinion, is certainly the backcourt and the backcourt depth. If you want to count Caris LeVert in that group, I obviously have him at the 3, but you can certainly call him a 2, maybe even a 1 in certain situations as a playmaker because they've got Kyrie, they've got Joe Harris, they've got Garrett Temple, they've got Spencer Dinwiddie, they've got Caris LeVert. All 5 of those guys can be multi-positional. They can play different positions and they can do different things on the floor. I just put together this initial group because you've got the secondary playmaker ball handler guy in LeVert, obviously the primary guy with Kyrie, and then Joe Harris as a shooter. And then you get to the 5 spot, and I think that's where things get relatively interesting for this team. It's Jared Allen and it's DeAndre Jordan. At the moment, I'm putting DeAndre Jordan as the starter simply because I think that's going to have to be a bit of an ego thing, even though eventually I do think Jared Allen is going to be a better option for this team at the 5 spot, and I'm just hoping that that doesn't cause chemistry issues for this team. Moving on now to the players to watch section, and the first one is Taurean Prince, and I tried not to step on my points here too much when I was talking about him earlier, but I really think people are undervaluing this addition for the Nets. When you look at his statistics with the Hawks, when you saw him play, he's a good young player, just circumstantially the Hawks didn't want to pay him here in 2020, and so they decided to move him and try and get value out of him. But I really think that he's going to be an important piece for this team. Again, as a 4, I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a move to shore up that a little bit and maybe try and bring Prince off the bench at the 4 and have a better, better sized starting 4. But at the end of the day, I really think this is an undervalued addition, someone that can do a lot of different things for this team. And again, just someone that people aren't really talking about, obviously, among the other more notable additions for this team. And then the other player to watch is going to be Jarrett Allen. And the reason being is I think he's extremely talented. I think he's definitely a starting caliber 5 in the NBA, and I would have much preferred to see him just remain the starting 5 for this team as he was last year. But unfortunately, they did bring in DeAndre Jordan, and I'm just not convinced that that's going to be a good thing for this team. Like, it's obviously possible that DJ has a good year, Jarrett Allen has a good year. Maybe he plays the 4 a little bit because he can shoot a little bit if you want to go really big with some of your lineups. I just definitely think it's an unnecessary distraction and concern if Jarrett Allen ends up being the better center for this team as a starter, which I think is a legit possibility. Is DeAndre Jordan going to get upset at that, and all those different things. So keep an eye on that situation specifically. It's not so much about Allen on the court. I think he's going to be good. It's just about how either of those guys are impacted by these situations of each other. Maybe Allen's already upset because they decided to bring in Jordan, and that could cause issues. And I want to avoid at all costs a repeat of the Celtics situation last year with Kyrie. And I do think there are some situations here that could cause some issues for this team. And again, I just want to stay away from that. But if you're interested in that, then definitely keep an eye on Jarrett Allen. Moving on now to expectations, and I definitely have this team as a legitimate playoff team. And in terms of a prediction, I've got them at like 47 to 49 wins, not in like the top 4 in the Eastern Conference, just because they have to obviously mend all of these players together. You don't know how well the Kyrie thing is going to work out. There's still a possibility for drama. Even that Boston team last year only won 49 games with all of the talent that they had. So I'm kind of hedging against that a little bit. So I think they'll be in like the 5 to 6 seed range in the Eastern Conference. But I do think that this is a team that, if things go right, could mesh well together and make some noise in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to be making the conference finals or anything, but still definitely a team to keep an eye on. So I've got them at about 47 to 49 wins, with this being kind of a development year, making sure that everything's coming together, making sure everything's on the same page coaching-wise. And then next year, once Kevin Durant comes back, that's when this team will really start to be a super, super dangerous team, because they've got Karis LeVert, they've got Spencer Dinwiddie, they've got Kyrie Irving, they'll have Kevin Durant next year, they've got DeAndre Jordan. They'll have all of those guys together under contract moving forward, and then we'll kind of see what this team is really going to be about. It's unfortunate that we're not going to get a chance to see them this year because of the injury to Kevin Durant, but I'm really excited to see them play this year anyway, and interested to see how everything goes. But that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.